For this next step, it's really critical that we keep everything in timing. So we have to know exactly where the time is, in other words, crankshaft to camshaft. So what we're going to do is rotate the engine to top dead center. We're not taking this timing chain off until we get all these marks set. Now if you look down right here in the front of the engine with my little pointer, I don't know if you can see this white thing or not, but right there is the indicator that marks where top dead center on the engine is. Now I'm going to go underneath and make myself a little chalk mark of some kind. I'm going to use some white paint to mark exactly so I can see, because these always have a lot of grease on them, exactly where the top dead center mark is on the crankshaft. And I'm going to set the engine to top dead center, and then I'm not going to rotate the engine until I get this camshaft back in place with the replaced head. So it's very critical that once I rotate this engine to where I need it, then I'm going to take this timing chain off, and I can't rotate the engine anymore until I get the head replaced. So let me go under and find the mark for 0, top dead center on the engine, and paint it. So we're turning the crank, and what we want is the engine at top dead center, and we put our white mark on the 0 mark on the crankshaft indicator, but we also have to have it on compression stroke on number 1, and so we call that having the rabbit ears up. So what we want is the cam lobes on number 1 cylinder to both be pointing up, and the easy way to remember it is the mechanics say the rabbit ears are up. So when the rabbit ears are up and we've got our mark set on 0, then we know it's number 1 compression stroke is about to hit.
Coming around, you're on 30, now to 20. You're still on 20. 15, 10, right there.
Okay? Alright, let's see where we are. We ought to have the rabbit ears up, and we ought to be on top dead center. So you see, they're not perfectly aligned up, but it is exactly top dead center. That's just the way you remember it. Those two cam lobes have to be up. And they are up, and we're exactly on that mark on top dead center. So now what we're going to do is put a mark on this timing chain and pulley assembly, and we also ought to be able to see on the back side that it's all perfectly aligned. As you can see, there's a mark on this gear right there, and there's a mark on the tower, okay? And those two little indented marks are lined up. So that's where we want to have everything exactly back that way when we reassemble this timing chain. So we're going to, just for precaution, we're going to put a paint mark on this timing chain and pulley. So wipe some of the grease off, so we'll know exactly where it was to make sure that we get it in exactly the right spot. Especially important if you took this head off and came back a week later and had to reassemble the thing. You'd want to make sure. So doesn't have to be perfect, because it just has to be within a cog, right? Exactly on the right cog. So there's where we are. Now we're ready to pull the timing chain off of the engine. But before we do that, we got to get some slack in it. We've also got to pull this little guide rail off, and that's where we need that special little tool. But first, we're going to go on this side right here, and we've got access to what it is a tension adjuster on the timing chain. So there's a little spring underneath that, and it also adjusts with the spring and hydraulic pressure, and it keeps tension on the chain. If we take it off, we'll get some slack in the chain, and that, coupled with pulling this pulley off over here, will enable us to pull that chain off of there. Like this. Now we're going to take this chain tensioner out of here. It's got we got this, but now it has a detent position, what they call a detent position. It ratchets in and it kind of locks. And so in order to release the tension on the chain, we need to take this thing off. Now you see we're releasing the tension on the spring by doing that. And so we can get this adjuster out of there. We'll put it back obviously later. Now what we're doing is pulling the little drive pin out. We've made the marks on the timing chain and everything, and we're ready to drop the timing chain off of the camshaft. We're actually going to pull the gear off, but the first thing we have to do is use our little assembly here. So we got a long 6mm bolt. The 6mm is the size by 1 pitch. And remember, we put a weight with some washers, and what we want to do is see if we can drive this pin that's holding this guide rail out of there. All right. Okay, so the little thing is just a drive pin, and my little homemade tool worked fine. So now it's just a matter of taking this one bolt off right here, and this guide rail will come out of there. It is. And now this bolt is loose, and of course this chain can come off of there. Take that bolt out. We want to be careful not to break this thing. Okay. And now, I don't know whether the chain will come off. We'd probably have to pull it off of the camshaft altogether in order to get it off. And now, what we're going to do is and I know this is scary, but don't worry, we can get it back. We're going to let the chain drop down in there. So, I just put the sprocket back on the camshaft temporarily. It'll stay on there. It's keyed. And so now what we're ready to do is to loosen the head bolts. But before we do, there are some critical bolts that are not torqued down, and they're real small, and we want to loosen them first. There are 4 of them. They're small. They're 6 or 8mm. I'll tell you when I get it. But there's a hex bolt right there, a hex bolt right there, and then inside was there one right there and one right there. You see them? There and there. We want to take those off before we loosen the tension on the head. So let's get those. Okay, so let's pull the inside ones first. We want to be particularly careful and not drop those in the pan. I just don't want to go fishing for them. We're ready to loosen the head bolts. There are 22 of them, and so we have to loosen them in reverse order from the way we tighten them. So number 22, which is on this cam tower in the back, is the very first one we loosen. And so we start with that one. And then 21, according to the picture, is the one on the other side of that cam tower. And so that's the next one. And then 20 is right there. And then 19 is there. Right by that injector nozzle in the back. Okay, that was 19. Now we go to 18. 18 is the very front one on this cam tower. And then 17 is on the other side of that same cam tower. And then we need to go to 16, and 16 is the next one down in sequence here. Let's see, did I loosen that cam tower? No. So 16 is there, and then 15 is on the other side, and then 14 is on the outside here, and then 13 is this one, again next to an injector hole right there. Okay, that was 13. Now we go 12 is this one, and 11 is directly opposite, and 10 is here, and 9 is here, and 8 is here. Oh, that was tight. Whoa, that's 8, and then 7 must be directly opposite that, yes. And then 6 is, it already loose, is the next one on this side. And then 5 and then 4.
Cam tower wouldn't be?
Let's see. No. 4 is this one.
Oh, okay.
Cam tower is the last 2. So this is 4. This is 3. This is 2. And this is 1. Oh, wow. Okay. We're going to take all those out now. We got all 22 head bolts out. We took them out in reverse sequence, and we laid them out exactly how they go in the head, just to be safe, just to get the right size bolt in the right size hole. So you can see that there really looks like 4 sizes. Long ones in the cam towers, and then there are 2 other sizes other than the ones in the cam tower. You see that's a little bit different length than that one, but those 2 are the same length. So we have 3 different size bolts we got to deal with, and so we laid them out exactly the way they go. Now this head should come off. Sometimes they're a little stubborn in terms of just being stuck, and so you have to sometimes tap them with a hammer or put something underneath it to pry it up. So we'll experiment with different things. If it's tight, it's loose. Sometimes what I do is just get up in here. Be careful that you don't kick anything loose. Something. There, I got it loose. Okay, Gordon, we're back to, we got the head pulled, and we've swapped out some things on the head. Now remember, normally you would take your head down to a machinist, but first you'd have to pull a lot of things off. We had the injectors out. We pull the cam tower off, it's just 4 bolts, and put it on our new head because we got a head to swap out, and we're going to take this one down and have it rebuilt. We took the glow plugs out and put them in our new head. we had one plug we needed. We didn't have it for the new head, so we put it from the old head to the new head. There was a plug in the block that went right there. Otherwise, we had the other pieces. So we got the water sensor, and we got the outlet for the heater hose, and we swapped out the little things that grab the engine when it's on the car, the front and back brackets there. We mounted the cam tower. It's a real easy thing. All it does is it has 4 bolts. One right there, one right there, one right there, one right there. There's studs that stick up it. You look over on the engine, on this head over here, you see the studs 1, 2, 3, and actually the last one came out. It screws in the cylinder head right there. So we took the cam tower off and swapped it onto the new one. The only thing we have to do is we have to put our pre-chambers in the new ones, but I'm going to wait and get the head torqued down before we do that, and then we'll be ready to put the injectors in later. That's about the last thing we have to do. So we're ready to put the head on. Now, on the block, what we've tried to do is one of our children, who shall be unnamed, ran this one out of water, and that's what blew this head gasket. So we had to clean the head up. And the gasket is actually off of it now, and we've scraped the surface down with a razor blade and cleaned up as best we could all along here. And we put a little oil on the cylinder wall so that when we crank it up, it'll crank up with some oil pressure a little bit. And now we're ready to put that head gasket on and set the head in place. Now the head is guided by dowel pins, and so it's got dowel pins. We set it down in place, and it'll be in the right spot as soon as we align the dowels. And it's real easy to feel it when it sits down on those dowels. Now what we have to do is grab a hold of this timing chain and bring it up through the head and then match those marks up. Now usually what I do is just put a piece of string on it and put the string through the head so that I can, pull it up. So I just tie a piece of string, and that's what I'll do, onto that chain and thread it through the head and then pull it back up there. You recall, we have not touched that engine. We have number 1 at top dead center exactly, and we don't want to turn that engine for obvious reasons. We want to get the timing back exactly correct for both injection and valve. So we're ready to put the head gasket on here and then set the head on and torque it down. Okay, now we'll pull our sprocket back off, and you see, make sure everything is right where it was. So there's the 2 marks. You see the marks on the cam lobe right there? There's one on the lobe and one on the cam tower. Okay, that's one check on the system. The other check on our little system is we got a paint mark right there. Okay, you can still barely see it because it washed off some with the oil right there. And what we want is the timing gear to be right there on that cog. Okay, because it was right there and right there. Okay, and then it should be perfect in terms of being aligned. Now there it goes. Okay, everything ought to be lined up. Make sure. Yeah, see, it's just as long as it's not off by more than the cog. It's right on right there. Okay, and our mark over here, our paint mark, you can see on that side is where I put it. See that paint mark? Yeah. So it's there and there, okay? Yeah. And on this mark, it's there. Yeah. And the rabbit ears are up, and it's still on top dead center, so we know it's all timed properly. So now, we're ready to put that big bolt in, pull that cam gear on. You recall it's a big 20-some millimeter bolt with a big washer on it. So once we do that, then things can move around, because now we got the thing back in time. But there's a hex bolt right there, a hex bolt right there, and then inside was one right there and one right there. You just goes through there, right? So we got this little 13 millimeter started, and we got our pin started, and what we're going to do is just line the pin up and then drive it in. But first I want to get that started real well. Might better leave it a little bit loose, make sure that it's loose enough to where I can move that a little to drive that pin in properly. So I just need a little hammer. Now you see, I see it coming through on the other side. It drives into the head right there. I want to be careful to get in a line. Not put it in a bind. And I might have to drive the last little bit with a punch or something. Now you hear it bottomed out, so we're good. You recall this chain tensioner went in there. I put some of my favorite gasket sealer on there, some Permatex. And so, as you may remember,
The spring.
this thing, the spring goes in last. It goes in after. See, it's indexed for that bolt as well. And then we've got a couple of 13 millimeter bolts that screw in right there. Okay, now as you recall, there's a gasket on this, so I don't worry about oil much here, but there's a spring that pushes that in, and it's got some pressure on it, so you got to push it in there pretty hard. Remember that? We did it so many times.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's bolt the head down. That's a critical piece. Tightening the head. So first we're just going to get all the bolts in the right spot. And then since we laid them out, we know what order they go in. And what we should always do is use some anti-seize compound on these bolts. We got the head on and all 22 bolts in the right spot. We just put them in there. And what we're going to do is just make sure that they all run in nice, real easy. We put anti-seize compound on all of them, all 22 of them, mostly on the tip of the bolts where you need it. And so we run them in, and then when we get them all just against the head but not tight in any way, we start with torque. And we torque them 4 times. And we literally have some rest time between some of the torques to let it settle down. And you have to torque each time in sequence. Now I'm not doing these in sequence because it doesn't matter. I'm just running them in. But as soon as I get to the place where I'm really torquing them with a torque wrench, I'm going to do everything in sequence, just exactly according to the way Mercedes designed it. So we'll come back when we get them all just barely down a little bit and show you how to torque them. It's critical. You can't take a shortcut here.